One of the memories I have of childhood is mum giving me the job of dandelion exterminator. Someone at the house I grew up in had this wonderful idea of making quite a large paved area out of bricks. And they laid the bricks on the ground in this lovely herringbone crisscross kind of pattern, which looked nice enough, but it did mean that there were many, many joins and corners that the weeds could find a place to grow in. Anyway, I'm not sure if it was punishment or simply just this job I had to do, but it was my responsibility to dig out the dandelions and put little piles of salt on all the roots. It did seem to work in the short term. Ultimately, though, it was a futile task, I discovered, because despite me, in spite of me, the dandelions just kept on growing. I do not remember a time where there were no dandelions in those bricks. Jesus really should have told a parable saying, the kingdom of God is like the dandelion. And then we really would have known what he meant by that. Now, I have heard the message of Jesus described as simple but hard. A simple message, like love your enemies, but hard to put into practice, like love your enemies. Sometimes I wonder if this statement is particularly true of the parables here in Mark 4. The message is often simple, but hard to put into practice. Take what seems to be the simple message found here. The kingdom of God will grow and mature, despite us, in spite of us, perhaps. We sleep and we rise, we run errands and we potter around here and there doing this, that, and the other thing, and somehow the potential of the kingdom is still fulfilled. It's quite a simple message. The growth of God's kingdom does not depend on us. This does seem hard, however, to put into practice. Have you noticed that our world seems quite unpredictable at the moment? The only constant, almost, is that we will wake each day to some sort of chaos, inflamed and inflicted by some action or some statement from someone or some group who seem far more interested in their own agenda rather than any sense of the greater good. There's economic and geopolitical uncertainty globally and locally. And this has an impact on us. It raises our levels of stress and anxiety on a daily basis. Here's something else I've noticed. There's a sneaky little temptation that many of us, including myself, fall for and succumb to and have done for a while now. And it's the answer to that question of, how are you? How often do we find ourselves answering that question with busy? Have you noticed yourself saying this? I think it's one of the big temptations of our time, the temptation of busyness. If you are busy, it appears that you are doing things, not just sitting around. If you're busy, you must be important or needed. If you're busy, you must be successful. We wear it as a kind of badge of honor. I've been busy. We use it as an excuse to get out of things. Oh, I can't, sorry, I'm busy. We hold it up as something to aspire to. Whoa, you've been busy, haven't you? It's funny that in the middle of saying these things, we never really stop to think about it. We say that there's never enough time to get all the things done, yet we continue to say yes to all of the things. We know how we feel when we have been busy for extended periods of time, frazzled, spent, and this nagging feeling like although we've been busy, we really actually have not achieved anything at all. So why do we glorify this? The human race is ridiculously capable. We can do just about anything we put our minds to. Take the last 100 years as a small snippet of human history. We've demonstrated an amazing ability to make and create just about anything, and we reward and are rewarded for it. Those who are praised are often the ones who achieve the most. And so because we're mostly insecure about our value in the world, there's a subtle but dangerous shift from we could to we should. And as a result, we think that we must not stop until we have made everything. And along the way, I think we start to believe that it all depends on us, because if we don't, then we will fade into oblivion. And it all depends on us to make it. If it all depends on us to make it, then we must make it. See, it's this dark little loop that we get caught on. Everything depends on us, therefore we must get about making everything, and so we get busy. As I notice these things, I remember in the back of my mind this long and rich tradition within Christianity of contemplative prayer and spiritual disciplines like silence and stillness and solitude. We have for a long time in our wider tradition known and experienced deep fulfillment and profound discoveries in what it means to be human by engaging in these prayerful practices that don't have a lot to do with being busy. Practices we know now through science can actually help reduce our fear and our anxiety. I also noticed that over the past 10 to 15 years, there has been this steady increase in awareness and knowledge of these practices. As our world moves away from stillness and calm, I wonder if the Spirit of God is trying to say something. So how do we respond to this in the Christian community as we face our struggles, our fears, our anxieties, our compulsive busyness? I would love to answer this by saying that we lean into being a deeply countercultural, calm, non-anxious, deeply present kind of presence, but I don't think I can say that. What's our normal response? Same as everyone else's. We get busy. It feels as if we respond in the opposite way to what the message of Jesus is. These parables and their simple message, an invitation to trust that the life of the goodness of God in the world is in fact the work of God. It's not dependent on us. But we give in, and we give in to the definition of success by busyness, which in reality is more like death by 1,000 cuts. And so we actually end up working against the truth Jesus is speaking. In the face of fear and anxiety, we well-meaningly want the reality of God to come bursting forth. And so we get busy in whatever way we can to make it happen. And in the meantime, we miss what's really going on because, well, we're too busy to notice. We strive to make our services more engaging and relevant. We make great looking websites. We make plans and discuss the latest missional frameworks. And we hire this person and that person, and we do, and we must, and we should. And potentially in the meantime, the seeds of the kingdom are taking root and sprouting, and we are just too busy to notice. We have the ability to make and create anything we want. And so we think that we should, and everything starts to depend on us, even the kingdom of God. It's a simple but hard message. God will do God's work, and it doesn't depend on you. Are we willing to accept the invitation from Jesus in this? Martin Luther, the German reformer, has been quoted to say, "While I drink my little glass of Wittenberg beer, the gospel runs its course." You know, one of the best things about holidays is that it has to do with deck chairs and the passing of time. So time moves on wonderfully well all by itself, I've discovered, while I spend holiday sitting on a deck chair. Apparently the world continues on quite well without me, amazing, while I'm on holiday. That's the gift of holidays. That's the invitation from Jesus. The flourishing of the kingdom of God doesn't depend on us. There's a saying that kind of sums up our attitude both in church and in wider society. Don't just sit there, do something. What if we flipped this around the other way? Don't just do something, sit there. This, of course, isn't a literal invitation to do nothing ever. God's invitation to us in our day and time might be to counter fear and anxiety and fruitless busyness by taking the time to move more and more intentionally, to move slowly and more spaciously in our lives. We're still involved in doing, it's just a different kind of doing. If Jesus is suggesting that we can trust God to do God's work, then what is our work? For as humans created in the image of God, we've been gifted the ability to make and create and intentionally direct our energy towards something. Edward Schweizer, in his commentary on Mark's Gospel, says this: to build one's life in this way, entirely upon God's promise and no longer upon one's own ability or inability, demands all the feeling, thinking, doing, and speaking of which we are capable. He implies here that the work of trusting God to build a God-centered life is in fact the work that we are to do, and that it will encompass all of what we end up doing if we let it. The question for us is not what can we do to cause the kingdom to grow, but rather what can we do to take notice and join in with what is already planted and growing. It's hard to trust God because it's more mysterious, less bound by time and space, less dependent on cause and effect, more dependent on the fact that we are loved and liked by God before we've done anything at all, more dependent on the power and the effectiveness of God in and of God's self. But this is the work we are to do, to build our life trusting that what we know of God is actually true. In the growing presence of contemplative Christianity, I wonder if the breath of Spirit to us in this age might be inviting us to pause and step out of the chaotic loops that we create. Jesus says, what is the kingdom of God like? It's like a way of living where we actually trust in the call and the promises of God, where we look to see and take time to notice growing up all around us meaningful ways of life where many can find a home. It is the participation in this kind of movement that we are invited into. So don't just do something. Sit there, take a breath, and get about living as if what Jesus said was actually true. In this is where the kingdom of God will flourish. The glorious disruption of the kingdom will be found when we actually take notice, when we live in harmony with the Spirit, when our melodies and rhythms join in with the song that is already playing. So get out your deck chair, grab your favorite beverage, and take a moment to watch the dandelions grow. Pay attention, be present, be mindful, be careful, don't just do. Resist the temptation of busyness. Take the opportunity to rise up in a new way of living.